If you're a solo player who's finished with Mark V and now need Plastinium and Spice Melange, but you're dreading stepping into the deep desert because it's PvP and it's brutal, and yes, you will get ganked, you're not wrong to be worried. But that's where I come in. I'm going to show you the most efficient and safest way to solo farm around 4500 spice sand in just 15 minutes, minimizing your risk and resource cost so you can get the large spice refinery as fast as possible. And if that still sounds too sweaty for you, I've got a second, much rattier and slower but completely PvP free method that's perfect if you're risk averse or just hate Mondays in the deep desert. But let's start with the deep desert and some foundation to build this guide upon. First of all, what I advise you to do here is mainly focused on spice sand, but the same applies to gather titanium and stravidium. Second thing we need to know is the fact that building anything in the deep desert costs 50% less materials, and you get a full refund of the resources when you demolish it. Every Tuesday morning, a Coriolis storm will come and wipe your base in the deep desert, so whatever you build there, you have to pack it up and leave with before then. But because of the full refund on buildings, this will practically cost you 0 materials, just the time of building and destroying. The other important thing is to never build a medium spice refinery or medium chemical refinery in your main base. You obviously can do that later if you become filthy rich, but the whole point of this video is efficiency. If you followed my previous tips video and did your trials early, then by this point you probably came across some of the small spice fields in Haga Basin, and maybe you built a small spice refinery and have some melange already. The magic number is 86 spice melange. The moment you make 86 with your small spice refinery, you should stop. Anything after that is a waste. Let me explain. We want to get to medium spice refinery ASAP to get to the large spice refinery ASAP. Here's the difference. As you can see, it's a significant improvement on both water consumption and spice sand per melange, with the large refinery being twice as efficient as the small one. That's a huge deal, especially if you're solo. To build a medium spice refinery in the deep desert, you need 68 spice melange. But you also need plastinium, which requires stravidium fibers, which requires a medium chemical refinery. And that will cost you 18 spice melange to build in the deep desert. So that's it, 68 plus 18 is 86, and that's the end of your small spice refinery. You're losing time and resource if you make any more spice with that one. Now once you have the 18, go ahead and make the medium chemical refinery, farm your stravidium, and start making the fibers, while your small spice refinery is cooking the remaining 68 melanges. Once you have them, destroy the small spice refinery and build the medium one in the deep desert, and that's our baseline. Now here's what we want to do. We want to build a base in the deep desert, quick, cheap, easy to manage, and productive. And for that, we need the following: 10 to 15 power generators, 4 to 8 medium water storage, chests, I start with 4, a medium spice refinery, a medium ore refinery, a medium chemical refinery, and 3 wind traps, or 1 or 2 large wind traps, and 1 pentashield. Water is flexible here, but for the sake of this guide, we're trying to generate passive water that costs the least amount of power. Mainly because power means more generators, and while that's easy to make, we are trying to be conservative with the space inside our tiny little box prison. You obviously can go bigger every week. This is just a starting point. I ended up with 2 large wind traps because they're super efficient and I could afford the extra 6 spice melange and the filters they needed. Now this is the full shopping list. I put a link to this website down below. It's pretty useful and it even has a tick box for deep desert discount, so it gives you the right amount of ingredients that you need. Just be careful because it shows you crafting steps, so you can see the amount of iron ingots includes the ones you need to craft the steel ingots, so it can be a little bit confusing. In our case, and if you followed my exact recipe, this is what you will need. You can also have a small box in your base that has the materials, so you can deposit it back when you pack up before the storm, and you don't have to make the calculation again. You just know to take the stuff from this box and go, and when you're back, drop them in and leave them. We will take no fuel cells or salvage metal, because nearly anywhere you build there will have those all around you. And the granite or basalt is based on how exactly you structure your base, so that's also up to you. Same applies for the type of filter you will use based on which wind traps you decide to build. As you can see, even without the basalt for the structure, the weight of those materials will not fit your inventory plus the scout Orni. So you can either do 2 trips or go with the assault and just park it there. Next thing is the location. You basically have 2 options here. You either build at the edge of the safe zone, which is the middle of the E row, or build in the PvP zone closer to where the resources and action is. If you build in the PvP zone, you will be able to optimize your gathering times because you will potentially have shorter trips back to base, while increasing the risk because players can raid your base after a sandstorm and strip you of everything you hold dear. For the sake of safety in this guide, I'll build in the E row, so that our method is medium risk and high reward. One tip in general to keep in mind here, and it's more important if you're building in the PvP area, if you make the replicator tool, you can take a snapshot of your base, and that way, if you have the materials ready, you can build it real quick and be safe inside ASAP, instead of going out in the PvP area and then decide to be an architect there. Now here's the tip. You can also build the base in Hagar Basin and settle on the design you like, because remember the space will be tight. Then take a snapshot with the replicator tool so that when you go in the deep desert, you waste no time and build it super quick. Here's the rules for the base. You want 2 floors, 2 walls high each, because the medium spice refinery is tall. One thing to note here, try to avoid slopes, as this can potentially cost you height, and you want to be able to have the building be 4 walls high. And then on the top floor, you need to put the wind traps and also have a space for the Orni to land, especially if you're going to use the assault. Which leads us to talk about the ornithopter choice. It's pretty critical in our strategy, and the wrong choice might equal an expensive disaster. You might be tempted to use the assault ornithopter, which you can do if you're going around hitting the PvE testing stations, for example, because it's a bigger storage. But since we have a place for it in our base, we can park it there and make it only a carrier back to Hagar Basin, because going solo with an assault to get spice from the PvP area is asking for trouble. Players with scouts can easily gang up on you, move faster than you, and even kill you in the PvE area. Using this humping technique, which I never knew was a thing until it happened to me, they'll try to pin you down and then get a worm to eat you, which is really petty. But hey, if the game allows it to happen, then you have to expect someone will do it. And as much as those guys were trash, and I even killed one of them, they still managed to get me, which was a waste of time and resources. Hence, our choice is the scout. The scout is faster and easier to maneuver. It has reasonable storage, which can carry about 3,300 spice sand, and with a Mark 5, you can maintain 172 km/h glide speed. And if you upgrade your wings to Mark 6, you can go up to 182 km/h. And while we're at it, let me show you quickly how to fly infinitely with your Scout Ornithopter without losing speed or altitude. If you didn't know, to maintain your speed and only lose altitude slowly, all you need to do is align this dot with the horizontal line like this. This will take you pretty far, but you're still losing altitude. To be able to maintain both, all you need to do is lower the dot a little bit below the line, like this. You will still maintain the top speed and lose altitude, but every now and then you can tap S to climb up at the expense of very little speed drop. Then you will speed up again. You keep doing that and you will maintain both high speed and net altitude gain. That's zero fuel cost no matter how far you are from your base. And that way, you probably don't need to carry a fuel cell and save the storage for the precious spice sand. Our goal is to minimize durability loss and carry the least amount of weight so we have more room in our inventory for spice sand. We achieve that by going commando. Here's what you need to equip. Any of the soft step boots, because those make a huge difference in reducing sandworm aggro. The easiest one to get is at testing station 197 right here. You need your best cut array. I had the compact compactor Mark IV when I did this. Your vehicle backup tool, a respawn beacon, and a battery. You should have easy access to Mark V batteries now, so none of that should be hard to get. Now water is a bit tricky. You can also have water on you, but I've done this without water as well. It's a bit tight, especially if it's sunny, but very doable. So if you really want to squeeze in all the spice you can per run, you can probably ditch the Lita John. And in terms of skills, you obviously have to have the Planetologist's Compaction passive, which gives you 20% more yield. Overcharge and the Fuel Efficient Pilot would be useful too, if you can afford the points. If you're going naked and without a Lita John, then it might be a good idea to take the Sun Tolerance passive in the Bene Gesserit tree. Now that we're ready, we're going to scout for a spice field, ideally a medium one. The small ones aren't worth it, and the bigger ones are more likely to have big guilds in PvP. It also helps if you play in the middle of the night like me. On the same website with the crafting calculator, there's an updated map of the deep desert so you can have a better chance of finding the spice fields quicker. There are 2 other websites that will have the map. I'll link them all below in the description. This one is pretty useful because it lets you select your region and shows you how much time is left before the next Coriolis storm. So once you find your spot, you then go and stick the respawn beacon in the nearest rocky area. It has to be so, as they would disappear if you place them in the sand, and preferably put them under something. Now head to the spice field and start collecting. Here I was lucky as this field was quiet and had just a couple of guys farming peacefully. And this is the vulnerable position where you can get killed. It might be a good idea to fly up routinely just to minimize the chance of getting surprise jumped. So you're having a look above you frequently, and that way you can run out if you feel threatened. If you start filling up your Orni, you can't back it up because it has spice in the inventory, and that will be your worst case scenario. But if you've been hitting some of the testing stations in the Deep Desert PvE area, or even some of the ones in Haga Basin, you will be getting tons of MK5 parts for all vehicles. So rebuilding your Orni won't be too costly. It goes without saying, obviously, that you want the highest mark engine and wings you can get, and you need to have those in the best condition possible. If you get chased or attacked, those parts are your most critical ones that need to survive for you to make an escape. Now you can see I managed to collect about 4,400 spice sand, and now I can fly back to my base, pump that sand into the spice refinery and let it cook. Store your Orni in your backup tool, kill yourself by clicking respawn, which will cost you some durability, but saves the minutes wasted in the journey, so it can be worth it based on the distance. Spawn at your beacon and carry on collecting. You can also do the same if you want to get back to your main base quickly, back up your Orni, get naked and kill yourself, and then spawn at the Deep Desert entrance, pop out the Orni and fly through the wall. With this method, it was easy to get the large spice refinery solo in under 1 weekly rotation. You need 500 spice melange for this, and remember, you will get a refund when you break your medium refinery, so that's 432 spice melange, which is about 33,000 spice sand. It takes about 15 minutes to loot and go back to your base, so that's 4,400 spice sand in 15 minutes. Theoretically, if you don't lose too much time looking for fields or getting chased by others, you will have the 33,000 in about 8 of those trips. That's a couple of hours or so. Like I said, that's the ideal scenario. You obviously need to factor in the time needed to farm the Stravidium and the Titanium, but you sure as hell can get this done in 1 week before the next map reset. Now, the last note about this monstrosity is that I don't think it's possible to fit it in a 4x4 box. You will need an advanced subfief and a bit more space upwards, because that one is a long boy, as you can see. Now, for the alternative, cheap, ratty, boring method I mentioned, I discovered it by mistake when I was raiding Edge of Acheron to get the Syndicate set, but I realized there's nearly always a small spice sand patch in one of those areas. And even better, you can log out, log back into another CH, and you will find either the same patch and loot it again, or one of the other ones. Admittedly, sometimes they will be bugged like this, but more often than not, I did manage to repeatedly loot them. The quickest way to switch servers like this is to either quit anywhere and switch to another CH, which will spawn you in Griffin's Reach. Then you can fly across or head south through the wall and back out here in the west. Or if you have a base in the Deep Desert that's close to the entrance, you can go there, log out, change CH and log back in. Because the Deep Desert is one server-wide instance and the CHs are just for the Haga Basin. Then fly back in and zone in from the west and you're in the same place. In any case, this is boring as hell and tedious, but hey, if you think it's what you want and you don't mind the loading screen simulator, now you know. The rate was roughly 550 spice sand in 6 to 8 minutes, including the loading screens, which is still nearly a fifth of the previous method. But like I said, 100% safe. Let me know in the comments if you have faster ways or more tips for solo players in the deep desert. And if you found this guide helpful, please remember to like and subscribe, as this helps me out a ton. I'll see you in the next video.